When you go to bed tonight, will you dream of something scary? A monster under the bed? A tall man in your window? Or perhaps a creature with sharp teeth and glowing eyes? Nightmares are a universal experience. We all have them. Sometimes they stay with us long after the sun rises, casting long shadows in our day. Ken harbored a secret, a dangerous addiction that threatened to shatter his life. Every night he tossed and turned in bed, his mind racing, his thoughts a chaotic jumble of fear and regret. Ken went to sit on the couch in the living room of his house. Hours passed, and the moon climbed higher in the sky. Ken slept on, oblivious to the events unfolding around him, couldn't recall hurting himself. Fear clutched at his heart, and he realized he had no choice. There were signs of a struggle, yes, but also a strangeness that defied easy explanation. A quiet young man, respected by his peers, had confessed to a heinous crime. During this stage, the body is essentially paralyzed, except for the muscles needed for breathing, and the eyes are closed. Experts believe that Kenneth was experiencing episodes of confused arousal, a state in which the brain is partially awake, but doesn't fully comprehend its environment. This can lead to actions that the individual has no memory of performing. But sometimes the sleeper can be awakened during this stage. If this happens, the sleeper may appear awake, but they are actually in a trance-like state. The defense argued that Kenneth's sleepwalking, and not his conscious mind, was responsible for the crime. This meant that Kenneth's intent was in question. Did he have the mental capacity to know right from wrong at the time of the crime? Experts testified that sleepwalkers are not criminally responsible for their actions because they lack the intent necessary for criminal liability. This was his gambling addiction, and subsequent financial problems had pushed him to the edge, leaving him desperate and hopeless. This mental pressure made sleep essential, yet sleep eluded him. Sleep experts say that without proper sleep, our brains and bodies suffer. It affects our ability to concentrate, our mood, and even our immune system. Prolonged sleep deprivation can cause hallucinations and paranoia. They may perform actions they cannot recall upon waking, and these actions can range from simple acts, like walking or talking, to more complex behaviors like cooking or even driving. As he fell into a restless sleep on the couch, his mind was struggling to cope with the stress of his waking life. It was as if his subconscious was trying to break through the surface, dragging him into a world where nightmares bled into reality. But the details of the case painted a picture of a puzzle without a solution. Why would a man harm his own in-laws? Why did he confess if he intended to deny his crime? And what role did sleepwalking play in this tragedy? To understand what happened that night, we must first explore the depths of Kenneth Park's sleepwalking disorder. The victim's house was neat, tidy, with no obvious signs of forced entry. Their wounds were horrific, but there was no apparent motive. As days turned into weeks, the mystery only deepened. The police had leads, but none panned out. The investigation seemed to be hitting a wall. Then came the unexpected breakthrough. A man walked into the police station, his steps hesitant, his shoulders slumped. He introduced himself, admitting that he had been sleepwalking. And then he uttered the words that would change everything. "I think I have just killed 2 people." But to call the police and confess to them what he thought he might have done. As the police car pulled away from his house, Ken sat in the back seat, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and dread. He struggled to make sense of the previous night, haunted by fragments of dreams and memories. His gaze dropped to his lap, unable to meet the officer's concerned eyes. As the car rolled to a stop in front of the nearest police station, Ken took a deep breath, bracing himself for whatever lay ahead. Then suddenly, as if jolted by an unseen force, he opened his eyes. Startled, he looked around, confused and disoriented. He couldn't remember his dreams or why he was on the couch. The only clue to the strange episode was a nagging sense of unease. Exhaustion pulled at his eyelids, and before he knew it, he had fallen into a deep sleep. His hands were cut and bleeding. He looked down at his feet and saw that his socks were dirty and torn. Struggling to piece together the fragmented memories of sleep, Ken slowly began to realize that something extraordinary must have happened. Feeling uneasy, he got up from the couch, stepped outside and looked around. Everything seemed normal. His car was parked in the driveway, and his house looked peaceful in the soft glow of the streetlights. He noticed that his shirt was rumpled and his hair was disheveled. He must have been sleepwalking, he thought. That night, as Ken slept, his mind wandered through a labyrinth of dreams. Some were pleasant, filled with sunshine and laughter, while others were dark and disturbing, reflecting the turmoil in his waking life. He dreamt of chasing a white rabbit down a deep hole, always falling but never landing. He dreamt of talking trees and houses with windows that smiled. All these dreams were vivid, pulling him deeper and deeper into their fantastical realms. His gambling addiction and the threat of legal action ate away at him, turning his life into a living nightmare. The constant worry drained him, and he started neglecting his responsibilities. Days turned into nights, and Ken found himself caught in a web of his own making. He had a serious gambling problem that he kept hidden from everyone, including his wife. As time went on, his habit grew like a cancer, eating away at his soul. He began to borrow money from his colleagues and friends, but his luck was terrible, and he soon found himself buried in debt. Desperate to make enough money to pay off his loans, Ken took a drastic step. He embezzled money from his workplace. For a while, his double life continued. He lived the life of a doting family man by day and a secret gambler by night. But his luck ran out when his colleagues noticed discrepancies in the company's accounts. When confronted, Ken confessed his wrongdoing. Afraid of the consequences, he tried to repay the stolen amount, but his efforts were futile. Ken was fired, and the prospect of repaying the money loomed over him like a dark shadow. But what if a nightmare bled outside the safety of dreams? What if it reached out and touched the real world? Welcome back. I am here today to tell you a story that blurs the line between the darkness of night and the harsh reality of dawn. It's the story of a man named Kenneth Parks, a good young man plagued by the darkness inside his mind. It's the story of a crime that defies logic and a nightmare that became a horror show. But before we begin, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our latest stories. In the small town of Stouffville, Ontario, life moved at a peaceful pace. People knew each other. Children played freely, and fear was a stranger in their midst. Here lived a young man named Kenneth Parks. He was a giant of a man, standing at 6 feet 2 inches. His size often intimidated others. But those who knew him understood that his heart was far bigger than his frame. Ken was a hardworking man with a strong sense of responsibility. He had recently become a father, and the joy of it was evident in his gentle smile. Ken was also a devoted son-in-law. His wife's parents, Dennis and Barbara Woods, were more like his own parents than his in-laws. They were a tight-knit group, bound by love and trust. But beneath this idyllic surface, a dark cloud was forming. As the weight of his actions pressed down on him, Ken's insomnia worsened. One evening after another, fruitless attempt to resolve his financial issues. Meanwhile, in the real world, time flowed steadily. He sat up, and as he did, he noticed something odd. But his confusion deepened when he noticed scratches on his arms and legs. The police were puzzled. The crime scene was unlike anything they had ever seen. The story of Kenneth Parks shocked the nation. Doctors believe that sleepwalking occurs during the delta stage of slow-wave sleep. In Kenneth Parks' case, something unusual was happening. His brain was struggling to transition from deep sleep to wakefulness, resulting in strange behavior. Kenneth's mental state was a combination of a sleep disorder, a lifetime of stress, and a recent bout of extreme insomnia. All these factors converged on the night of May 23, 1987. Pushing Kenneth's mind into a state of confusion, Kenneth's trial was a landmark event in Canadian jurisprudence.